in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What's up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm here without co-host Ian. Has work today, so we weren't able to fit it in our schedules. I'm actually going to Game 6 of the NLCS at Dodger Stadium between Dodgers and Mets. So it's just me, but we still do the show, even if it's just one of us. So it's the Week 8 recap. Let's jump right into it. The first game I have was from Friday. There was actually a couple games on Friday. One we won't talk about is the Florida State game, but that was there as well. But the first one we have from Friday was Oregon-Purdue. It was in Indiana, and Oregon just took it to them. There's not much really to say about this one because they won 35-0. This game was never in doubt. Brown for Purdue had 93 total yards passing, and Gabriel had 290, and he was 21 of 25. So clearly Oregon was a way better team. Purdue was way overmatched. This could have been a trap game for Oregon coming off of a huge win against number 2 or 3 Ohio State at the time. So good on them for, coming back after such an emotional win. And they continue the good vibes. It's not like Oregon did a ton here. They just were per se in control the whole game. They didn't put up 600 total yards. They only put up 421. They rushed the ball okay, but not great. Yards per play was 7 yards per play, so it's not bad. And they were efficient on third down and fourth downs. Only had to punt the ball twice and had 1 interception. So they played well enough to win, and it really was a talent disparity between the two, and that's really the difference in this game. And, going forward for Oregon, as the number 2 team in the nation behind, I believe, Georgia right now. Or actually, it might be Oregon's number 1. Let me double check real quick. Let me refresh this, and it might be able to tell me because I had this from last night. Yeah, still number 2. So I believe Georgia's number 1 as of Sunday. But yeah, Oregon has some tough games coming up. They've got Illinois at home, Michigan on the road, the Maryland team, which is kind of spicy after that win against USC. Wisconsin's looked better, and then the rivalry game against Washington. So it's not an easy road the rest of the way out, but I believe that Illinois game is probably the toughest game they're going to have the rest of the year. I like Oregon in that as of right now, but we'll talk about that later. Let's move on to another Friday game. This was one of the better games of the entire weekend. This was such a fun game to watch. I didn't give Oklahoma State much chance in this game, largely because I'm not a big fan of Bowman, the quarterback for Oklahoma State, but they actually sat him, and in came very athletic Garrett Rengel, who played really well at first. He did throw a pick, but he was, moving the ball quite well with their offense. He had 77 yards on the ground to go with his 51 passing, and they were playing really well with him in there. And it looked like, they were going to take it to BYU, and, that seems to be their weakness, which it is a lot of teams. Even the best defenses struggle against really good athletic quarterbacks, which, Rengel was clearly way more athletic than Bowman. And Bowman comes in afterwards because Rengel got hurt. And, he looked good, moving them down the field. But, second half, BYU comes back, goes ahead into the fourth quarter, and then Bowman leads them down to tie it. field goal. Then Bowman puts him back up. So it wasn't like Bowman was completely inept in this game. He did come back and do some things, and he's not the worst quarterback, but he's just, I don't know, like, I'm not a fan of his. But then the magic happened. BYU gets the ball with like a minute or so left. They Retzlaff just, you know, magician puts this drive together. He has a fourth down conversion. He has a long run, and then he has this spectacular yards after catch by the receiver after a catch from Retzlaff, and just jukes three defenders and gets in the end zone with like 10 seconds left, and BYU wins, and they're still undefeated. I mean, this team has a lot on it. Like, overall, I think, like, pound for pound, like, everything that they do is very sound. They're very good defensively. They're very very astute on special teams. They make plays on both sides of the ball there, where both defense and special teams, to be able to get non-offensive touchdowns. And it's a difference in the game. They almost had a pick six. It was close to getting in, and they're very fortuitous defense. Retzlaff throws 3 picks here, which is not good. One of them was near the end of the half, so it's kind of like understandable, but still the other 2 were kind of bad. But they only had 2 penalties. Oklahoma State only had 1 penalty. This is 3 penalties in the entire game, which is kind of remarkable. But yeah, this BYU team, the rest of the year they have, let's see, they've got UCF next week, which UCF is really on a downward spiral. Utah without Cam Rising is kind of easy to beat. They got a week off in between the UCF and Utah game. Kansas has been in a death spiral. Arizona State is probably their toughest game left, and it's in Tempe or Phoenix or wherever Arizona State is. I can't remember. And I think it's Phoenix. And, it's this schedule right now sets itself that they could be 11-1 by the end of the season and get into the Big 12 championship game. And they might just sneak into the playoff regardless of what happens in the championship game for the Big 12. So we'll see. I like BYU a lot. They're a fun team. They do a lot of interesting things. They do a lot of fakes, a lot of halfback passes, a lot of wide receiver passes, double passes, flea flickers. They're open, fake punts, all kinds of stuff. They're open to open up the playbook and not just to play it straight up. And it's fun to watch. And, Retzlaff is competent enough. And, their schedule has been easy so far. But they don't play Kansas State. But we'll see. Or they did beat Kansas State. So they don't play, what was the other? Iowa State. That's the team. Sorry. They don't play Iowa State. So they're lucky there, but they may have to play one of them in the championship game, which is more than likely because it's going to be the 3 teams, Iowa State, Kansas State, and BYU coming down the stretch. Okay. Next game, going to Saturday's games, Miami, Louisville. Talk about another really good game. This game was back and forth the entire time. If Louisville had any chance of winning, they had to score almost every drive, and they almost kept that end of the bargain up because Miami was scoring at will. And, the offense for Miami is very good. There's no denying that. Cam Ward is, putting up a huge season. They haven't played the strongest of defenses, so we'll wait and see until they play some better defenses like, I don't even know. I mean, Duke's probably a better defense, and maybe Syracuse and Tech's defense has been better this year. So, but even then, it really won't be until probably an ACC championship game or a playoff game till they get truly tested, because a complete team, a team with a good offense and a good defense is more than likely going to beat this team, because Miami's defense is not good. They have allowed so many points week in and week out to Cal, to Va Tech, to Louisville this week. So if there is a weakness on this team, it's definitely that the defense cannot stop anybody. And, if they play anyone with a decent defense, and the defense they play gets like quite a few stops, Miami's going to be in trouble. So we'll see. This game overall, though, Cam Ward, I think, had 4 TDs in the game and, 319 yards. Tyler Shuck had a really good game, 342 yards, 4 TDs as well. Isaac Brown had a good game. Damian Martinez looked good running the ball. He had a really tough run late in the game that really kind of closed it out there. Ja'Cory Brooks with another huge game. The kid's a stud, just puts up huge numbers every week. I think every week I see him with 2 TDs. It was pretty even game for the most part, and it felt like whoever had the ball last was going to win, and Miami had the ball last, and that was it. So 538 total yards to 448. Miami ran the ball really well, which was surprising because they haven't put up like huge numbers on the ground as of yet, as far as like over 200. I don't think, and against a good opponent, and they really ran the ball really well, effectively, and they were efficient on third downs, converted the fourth downs that they got to as well. So they were definitely moving the ball. A ton of first downs, 27. And honestly, that fumble that was a return for a touchdown that got called back, I don't know what to say. Like, it's 3 weeks in a row that Miami's gotten help from the ACC replay booth. It's close. I saw one clip yesterday that like showed it from like off angle from in front of Cam Ward, and the ball never truly looks settled as he's getting hit and as his arm is like going up and then going to go forward. So, I don't know, man. It's tough to really like say what they're seeing and like what like is definitive, because the crazy thing is it was called a fumble return for a touchdown on the field. So how did it be definitive that it was an incomplete pass in the replay? I don't think it was. I don't think it was in the Vatek game, because that was a touchdown ruled on the field. The targeting was considered a targeting because they called it on the field. They've overturned all 3 of these. So like, I don't know what to make of it. It could be luck. I mean, then again, you saw Restrepo again on the ground catching a ball. It didn't end up being complete, but he caught a ball as he's falling to the ground. Like, just some of these luck things that keep happening for them. It's like, okay, sometimes you just have the luck in your fortune, but what ends up happening if you're relying too much on luck and you go up against a buzzsaw, then you just get destroyed because, your luck runs out. And that's what likely is going to happen with this team, it feels like, because they have not played a complete team yet. This Louisville defense was not good either, and they gave up a ton of yards, obviously, and they couldn't tackle to save their life. There was a play with number 11 for Miami. I can't remember the receiver's name, but it was near the end of the game, and like all 3 converge on him, and then he just like bounces right off of them, and I'm just like, this is comical how bad this tackling is. And so Miami gets the win 52-45, still undefeated. They have Florida State next week, and a lot to play for. More than likely going to the ACC championship game, and with a potential playoff spot either on the line, or maybe they'll secure it beforehand, which I think they will. I think if they go 11-1, 12-0, I don't think even with a loss in the ACC championship, they're going to get denied. So I think they're definitely in the playoff at this point. Okay, next game we have is Virginia Clemson. Speaking of their ACC rivals, it was 3-3 early, then a bad pick by Cade Klubnik. It was 10-3 UVA, and it's like, whoa, what's going on here? But then Maffa scores is 10-10. Another Maffa score, 17-10. They get one up point. They went up at 38-10, and UVA scored some late touchdowns that were in garbage time. But Klubnik I mean, man, the kid looks really good. Like I'm kind of blown away considering what he looked like last year and then the first game of the year against Georgia. And I was like, oh, this kid is a bum. But man, he's really put it together. He's like several 300 plus yard games throughout the year so far. He had 3 TDs. Phil Maffa looked really good. 2 TDs, like I said, 78 yards. They held Virginia in check for the most part. Only allowing 346 yards. Clemson had 539, 194 on the ground, 28 first downs, very efficient on third down and fourth down. Just a great game. Besides that Klubnik interception, they didn't turn the ball over after that. Had a lot of penalties, but this Clemson team, defensively they're really strong. I think they've gotten to these games where they just kind of like let teams get back into it because they've already subbed out so many people and it doesn't look as bad. And I think they realize it doesn't matter because if they win out, because they don't have to play Miami in the regular season, if they win out, that one loss to Georgia does not look terrible considering that Georgia is probably, the top team in the country as of right now and probably throughout the rest of the year. And so losing that one game is not the end of the world. And, I don't think they really are worried about style points because as long as they keep winning and they get to the ACC championship game, and I think even if they lose that, I think the loser of that ACC championship game, regardless of record, still gets in. I think a 2-loss ACC runner-up still gets into the playoff, I would think. I mean, I don't see them not getting over certain teams. I think it definitely, it'd be like 2 teams from the ACC and then maybe like at least 4 from the Big Ten, probably 4 from the SEC. So that's 4, 4, 8, 2, 10. So 2 more, probably a Big 12 team, maybe 2 Big 12. But then you have to have, I think, the G5 team. So I don't know. It's going to be tough. I mean, I think this ACC situation will play itself out because obviously Clemson and Miami, if they keep winning out, will play each other. And it's tough because I would like to see both Clemson and Miami in the playoff, regardless of what happens in the championship game. So we'll see. But I like this Clemson team the rest of the year because they don't have too many more tough games. Let's see what they got. They got Louisville. Well, that's a tough game. Vautech, tough game. All right, Pitt. Never mind. Okay. I was mistaken. And that South Carolina team is really tough. They beat the crap out of Oklahoma. Okay, so never mind. They got quite a schedule there. So it's still a gauntlet. But I like this Clemson team a lot because they're scoring a ton of points. Which is amazing how bad they played against Georgia and then just the complete difference they've been ever since. They're very effective in their passing attack. Klubnik's looked really good, really poised back there, making a ton of plays. And Maffa's a great back. So the offense is really potent right now. Okay, moving on to a game that I really wanted to focus on. Indiana and Nebraska. 6-0 Indiana going up against 5-1 Nebraska. And you would think, oh, this game's going to be close. Dylan Raiola, Cignetti's got the Hoosiers running great offense. But no, it was a blowout, from the very beginning. And Rourke for Indiana didn't even play the whole game. It could have been even worse. Curtis Rourke ran out about third quarter, and he had hurt his thumb at some point, either in that game or before. And so they just took him out to just prevent him from injuring it even further. But he looked great. His passes were on the money, only in spots the wide receiver could catch it. Raiola was fine, but he had a bunch of picks. And you can't turn the ball over against this Indiana team and give them short fields, which they did. And, this Indiana team, I know people are now waking up to them, but they are very good. I've been watching them ever since that UCLA game. And when I noticed in that UCLA game that how well they were in there, I'm like, okay, there is something up with this team. And then I started to hear about Cignetti, and he's getting a lot of hype for potential coaching openings, which might be Florida, depending on what happens with Billy Napier. And so there's like back and forth with this guy. And like, dude, Hoosiers are 7-0. It's, I think, the sixth straight game with 40 plus points. They win 56-7. This game was a blowout. And I'm telling you, man, Indiana has some interesting games coming up in the next couple of weeks because they play Washington, a decently tough game. Jed Fish will have them up for that. Then they have back-to-back Michigan and Ohio State, but they've got Michigan at home. That Ohio State game, everything's going to be on it. They could be 10-0 coming into that game. Can you imagine a 10-0 Indiana versus a 9-1 Ohio State? I mean, that'll be huge. It'll be a monster game. I hope that's a primetime game. I hope we can get to that game with those records. That would be a lot of fun. And honestly, I feel like Indiana, even if they lose a game or two, which I think they're only going to lose maybe one more game, that they're going to be 11-1. And if they don't get to the Big Ten championship game, that they likely should get in because of that, because they'll be right under. But I feel like they're very close to getting into the Big Ten championship game. They're like, and especially if they beat Ohio State, I think they're almost assured of it. So hats off to them. Cignetti is real. He's a great coach, and he's just doing amazing things. Okay, first team that we cover, we're talking about today is UCLA. They went up against Rutgers. Explosive offense, finally. I mean, like, UCLA fans have been waiting all year. Richard, I'm happy for you because I know how much it's been a struggle all year. But UCLA gets off the losing snide. They won the first game against Hawaii and lost 5 straight. Now they beat Rutgers 35-32 after going cross country. You know, it was back and forth for a little bit, but UCLA was up 21-10 at half. And, you know, they looked like the better team for most of the game. Rutgers came back in the second half, but then, you know, UCLA got up 35-19, and, you know, Rutgers had some late scores, but credit to this UCLA team. They kept pushing forward. They kept making plays. You know, Garbers, I know we've been talking trash about him. He just looked bad in a couple of games, but he looked amazing in this game. 32 of 38, 383 yards, 4 TDs. Got to give his flowers where the flowers are due, and they're due. And defensively, they didn't look phenomenal, but they did enough to win. And you know, they didn't cause a ton of turnovers, which, you know, that's whatever. It's not the end of the world, but I think they just did enough. They survived, and that was the whole point of this game because they were way better on offense. They were 7 of 13 on third down and 1 of 1 on fourth down. So they were very efficient there. And, you know, they made plays when they needed to. They ran the ball a little bit, and Garbers just did the rest, really. And credit to UCLA because they could have given up. They could have had a cross-country flag and just been like, nah, we're not playing this one. And, you know, we're just going to waltz through this. But they didn't. They played really tough, and they got the W. And, you know, maybe this is a turning point for them. Maybe they can start, you know, thinking about finishing off the year and turning it into next year because schedule-wise, they got a tough one next week, Nebraska. They play Iowa after that, Washington, USC, Fresno State. I mean, they could win at least 2 or 3 more games. So they've got some chances here. We'll see. Anything is possible with this team, especially if the offense can play the way they did. That is an outlier right now because the rest of the data set shows 17 and under for point totals. But, you know, I like where they're at. If Garbers can keep playing the way he did on Saturday, they look very good for the rest of the year. Okay, quick on this one. Army, East Carolina. I'm just getting into watching their games. This kid, Daly, man, I'm telling you, man, he's a beast. The quarterback for Army, 7 of 10, 147 yards, a touchdown, 171 on the ground, 5 TDs, 6 total TDs for the game. So this kid is for real. He is athletic as all get out. He has complete command of this offense. They are a well-oiled machine. This is one of the better option offenses you will like ever see. It's a thing of beauty. Their defense is very stout as well. They gave up some later points to East Carolina, but they were just in complete command in this game because they were up at one point. I think they were up 38-0 and no, 31-0. And they just, took it to them. They end up winning 45-28. Later scores in the fourth quarter by ECU. But yeah, just hell of a team. Really proud to see this Army team do so well. 442 total yards, 295 rushing. I mean, that's just what they do. They average like 360, I think it was, a game. So yeah, it's right around average. They just run the ball really damn well, and they're just a very fun offense to watch. It is a joy to see this because everyone appreciates service academy teams, and Army and Navy are doing really well. And we'll talk more about Navy in a little bit. One of the big games of the day, Alabama, third Saturday of October, going up against Tennessee in Knoxville. This was a back and forth game. Tennessee was shut out in the first half again for the second week in a row. Alabama was making plays. Milroe looked fine, but he had some mistakes that really were costly. He had 2 interceptions. There was a pick even by Nico's backup and then Nico threw a pick as well. So there was a bunch of interceptions in this game. There was a missed field goal by UT. Sampson had 2 TDs that really started coming. They started coming back on Alabama. Nico with a great touchdown pass that he had. Like I said, Milroe had a late interception. Alabama only had 314 total yards. They couldn't run the ball very well, while Tennessee could. Tennessee had 214 rushing yards. So Tennessee really dominated the ground game here, and time of possession was in favor of Alabama, though, somehow. It just was Alabama was making enough plays to be able to keep first downs because they had more first downs than Tennessee. But they didn't convert that well on third down, 3 of 14, and 1 of 2 on fourth down. Tennessee wasn't much better, 6 of 14. But credit to Tennessee. They kept coming. There's a lot of penalties in this game, 26 between the two teams, 15 for Alabama, 11 for Tennessee. So Alabama, had their chances in this game. They were up late, I believe 17 to, what was it? 17-14. And then Tennessee gets a late touchdown and then a later field goal. And it's like, Tennessee should have lost to Florida last week. I think everyone all realizes that. That's not a far off or biased opinion. It's just the reality. Billy Napier couldn't get good play calls and struggled in the red zone for Florida, where they should have probably won by at least 2 scores in that game. But Tennessee survives that game and then comes in this game and almost does the exact same thing and gets shut out again in the first half. But then they are able to hold on. Sampson is doing quite well, and another 2 TDs. I think he's got over 15 on the year. The kid is just a touchdown machine. He's very sound on the ground. Nico is fine enough. 194 yards, 14 of 27. But yeah, Dylan Sampson, 139 yards, just a stud. And now Tennessee has only 1 loss. Alabama, with the loss to Vandy and Tennessee, has 2, which is probably the first time in probably 15 years that Alabama has 2 losses in the regular season, which is crazy because, Saban was so good for so long. Okay. Next game, we have Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. This game was never really close. I don't know what happened to Haynes King. Zach Pyron was in the game, and I'm not really a big fan of his. I like Haynes King more. I think he has way more command of the offense. He had 2 interceptions, Pyron, and 45 yards on the ground, but just I don't know. I just wasn't impressed with him. Um, Notre Dame moved the ball quite well, and Riley Leonard, efficient game. He had a pick, but he also had 51 yards on the ground and 2 TDs. So, this Notre Dame team is sneaking back up on people because they haven't been around lately. People hadn't been talking about them because they lost that game to Northern Illinois. They had 385 yards in this game, efficient enough. They made enough plays to be able to win this. You know, controlled the ball, time of possession. This Notre Dame team is not amazing, but they're not like an average team. They're like probably like above average, and the more than likely will make the playoff because if they win out their schedule, I think even if they lose one of their games, they have a chance of getting in. But I think they beat Florida State. I think they beat Virginia. They probably beat USC. And if they split Army and Navy, they have a real shot. But it's going to be tough. Army and Navy are really good. We've talked about already. Will that Marcus Freeman-led defense be able to stop the option attack? Okay, moving on to Michigan and Illinois. This Illinois team really sneaking up on people because, they look really good, honestly. They're effective in what they do. Defensively, they're very strong. This Michigan team is very limited because their passing attack is non-existent. They have a good ground game with Donovan and some of the other Donovan Edwards and some of the other running backs. I have this guy Mullings had a good game, but Jack Tuttle is not very good. Threw a pick, 20 of 32. And, Illinois, just took it to them defensively. They didn't do a ton on offense, but they didn't need to. And Michigan's got a really good defense as well. So that's probably why I was limited. But, 3 turnovers to no turnovers by Illinois. And that's the difference in this game. Illinois took advantage of those turnovers. And now Illinois, moves on, and they're 6-1. They let's see their schedule. They've got Oregon next week, and then really the rest of the schedule is pretty manageable. So even if they lose this game next week, they have a really good shot of potentially getting in the playoffs. So, which would be wild. I'm trying to think who they lost to here in this year. They lost to Penn State, so a loss to a top 3 team in the country is not a bad loss, even though they didn't look bad in that game either. So I don't think they'll beat Oregon, so they'll probably be 2 losses, but 10-2 looks really good, and there's a really good shot that they could get in the playoffs. So anything is possible for them. Okay. Another team we cover, USF and UAB game. USF wins 35-25. I know a lot of fans were like, I don't know, like USF fans are like so dejected. It's been tough. Like they played Alabama, they played Miami, they played Memphis, and they played Tulane. Like that's at that point, as of last week, it was the 8th toughest schedule in the entire country. So you got to give it a grain of salt. Yes, they didn't look good in most of those games, but they looked good in the Alabama game, and they looked good in a half for Miami. So there are things to work on and to build upon from those. And plus the latter half of the schedule is way easier. And it started with this UAB game, and they get the win here. Yes, there was a fight on the sidelines. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I mean, it happens. Football is a emotional sport, and sometimes it gets the best of us. I've seen it in plenty of teams I've played on. It just happens. You try to, keep it in check with your players and move on from it. And they look like they did, because they were down like 19-7 at that point when the fight happened. And then they used it and went forward. And, Bryce Archie played better after that. Kelly Joyner had a really good game, 94 yards on the ground, 2 TDs. Keyshawn Singleton had 105 yards. Sean Atkins had a really huge punt return to set up the go-ahead touchdown. It is what it is at this point, because Byron Brown is more than likely hurt for more games, and they're just going to have to be able to create offense as best they can. I know everyone wants Izzy Carter, but Bryce Archie seems to be the guy right now, and he was effective in this game, and he gets the win. I don't know what else to say, because it should have been a bigger blowout because they were favored by 14, I believe. But USF wins this game, and they get out of the game, and they get off the schneid after 3 straight losses. And you know what? Things are looking up. It's not the end of the world. Now they're 3-4. The schedule outside of Navy is manageable. They have Florida Atlantic next week, the Navy game after that, Charlotte, Tulsa, Rice. I mean, they should go 4-1 the rest of the year, and 4-1 means they're 7-5 with a chance to win the bowl game and go 8-5. There's nothing wrong with 8-5 and building on this. Alex Golish has the recruiting moving well. One of the better recruiting rankings of the group of 5 teams. So we'll see what happens. And I'm hopeful. I feel like because the schedule was so front loaded that it was tough to be able to overcome that. But now it's so backloaded with easy games that they should be able to just run off a bunch of easy victories. Okay. Speaking of another AAC game, Charlotte Navy. Navy wins 51-17. Navy looked really good. Offensively, Navy is very efficient on the ground with their triple option as well. Defensively, they're not as strong, even though they looked better in this game than Army did. But, I think it's just because Charlotte is terrible. Max Brown, former Gator, 3 interceptions, just looked terrible. But all around, Charlotte is just not a good team. I'm surprised that Biff guy is still coaching them. But no, this Navy team, just made the plays that they needed to. I think there was 5 turnovers, and that was really the difference in this game. So Navy wins this one 51-17. Okay, let's move on to USC Maryland. USC was up in this game 28-14, and I thought they were going to win this game again. And it's getting to the point where it's a broken record that USC has a lead and they can't hold it. And I'm feeling very terrible for my USC friends because they've gone through this every week now. And, seemingly teams that they should be beating, they're just not beating for whatever reason. And, I don't know. I don't think that this this USC team is not talented. I think they're very talented, and I also feel like USC has an opportunity to try to play out the rest of the season and make the best of it. It's tough what they've gone through. I really feel for them because they at this point should be like at worst 5-2. Like they really should be. They should have won that Minnesota game. They should have won the Penn State game, and they should have probably won this Maryland game. I don't know what's going on. They feel like very badly snake bitten. It's tough to watch, tough to see these results, and it is bizarre because it's like there's a lot of talent there. Miller Moss is making plays. The wide receivers are studs, and they're making one-handed catches all over the place. Woody Marks. I don't know what to make of it. I really don't. And it's a shame because there is so much talent there, and there's so much high expectations for this team, and they're just not living up to it. The rest of the season is tough. Notre Dame rivalry games with UCLA as well, and I believe Nebraska. So I don't know. I mean, it's up to Lincoln Riley to get these guys ready to play and to win these games, because it's 4 one-score games, and then you get the one-score game against LSU as well. So they're 1-4 in these games, and it's like, I don't know. You just got to start winning these, and it's really, really annoying. Like, as a fan, I'm sure the fans are just over it, because they should be winning these games, and they in the beginning of the season looked like a playoff team. I thought 10-2 was almost assured of, and now that's such a far off dream that it seems like it wasn't even possible. I don't know. USC, it's just tough. It's really a shame. They're a better team and they deserve better. It's a shame that there is a 12-team playoff now, and they have a really good shot of getting there, and their talent is there, and they're just not doing it. Okay, moving on to Texas A&M, Mississippi State. Texas A&M, loses that first game against Notre Dame and then just wins straight 6 games in a row. Mississippi State is 1-6, so kind of tough for them, but they've looked really good in these games. Their quarterback, Van Buren, looks really good. He's very athletic and effective. Connor Wegman did enough to win the game, had 2 interceptions, though. Le'Veon Moss with 2 TDs. Texas A&M defensively, very sound, very effective. Scooby Williams had a big play in this game, which I thought was interesting because Scooby is a former Gator. I don't know. Mississippi State played well with them, but Texas A&M was kind of ahead most of the game, and it was 31-17 at one point, and then it got to 31-24, and then Texas A&M hits that field goal late, so it was actually much closer than it even looked. So Texas A&M survives essentially in this game. They did not look great on offense, but they did enough to be able to win this game. And, they're 6-1 with a lot of tough games to go. They have LSU, they have South Carolina, and Texas. So that's 3 games, at least 1 loss there. So I don't think they're getting to the SEC championship game. Outside shot of getting to the playoff. We'll see. Lots to play for A&M, and it's Mike Elko's first year. So kudos to him for inheriting a team that was underwhelming for like 2 or 3 years because of Jimbo, and now looking definitely like a team that nobody wants to play, even though they kind of struggled yesterday. Could have been the opponent. I think Mississippi State is a way better than their 1-6 record shows. Okay, LSU, Arkansas. I could have swore I had this as my upset pick. I could have swore Arkansas was going to have a better game. LSU was in complete command of this game. It never really was close. Nussmeier, solid enough. No TDs, though. But just the run game for LSU looked like it did really well. 101 yards on the ground. And I believe he had, what is his name? Caden Durham had 3 TDs on the ground. So he had a huge game on the ground. Only allowed 277 yards for Arkansas. So LSU's defense finally came to play, first time all year, really. And this LSU team now is 6-1, number 8 in the country. They have a ton to play for. Their schedule is a little rough, though, because they have Alabama, They have a road game against Florida, which Florida seems to be a little resurgent lately. Vanderbilt, which is a tough game, and then they close out with Oklahoma. But yeah, so 3 interesting games. Alabama is definitely going to be up for that LSU game, and Vanderbilt could have everything to play for in that game. Vanderbilt is now ranked, I think, for the first time in like over 10 years. So, there you go. Let's move on to the biggest game of the day. Number 5 going up against number 1. Texas going up against Georgia in Austin. Georgia wins 30-15. This game looked like a blowout in the first half. Texas comes back and makes it a game, makes it a one-score game, 23-15. And then Georgia gets a late TD. Trevor Etienne, the trader, gets 3 TDs, 87 yards on the ground. Quinn Ewers looked rough in this game. He had 2 TDs, but he looked really bad in the first half. They even put in Arch Manning, and he looked even worse. Carson Beck looked really bad all overall. He had 3 interceptions. Really got lucky offensively, Georgia, because they had a lot of short fields due to 4 turnovers by Texas. And it was seemingly like all of the Georgia turnovers really didn't bite them in the butt. And the Texas turnovers really were the detrimental ones because Georgia only had 283 total yards to Texas's 259. So this is definitely a defensive game. I still like Texas's defense a lot. I think Quinn Ewers is still coming back from this injury a little bit. Maybe he'll have to get over it to finish out the year to get better, which I think he will. And their schedule, Texas has Vanderbilt next week, which is tough. Home game against Florida. Arkansas, tough game. Kentucky, Kentucky's kind of pooped the bed lately. And then a rivalry game with Texas A&M. So they have a tough schedule. They don't have any non-con the rest of the game. So all of these games are SEC games. So they're definitely going to have to get ready for this. I think they can. I think it's manageable. I still think they're one of the better teams in the country, probably the best team in the country. But we'll see heading into some of these games. Georgia, now the number 1 team in the country, and we'll see. I think Georgia, when they go up against Florida, is going to be a tougher game than I think they thought like last couple of weeks, especially after this Kentucky blowout, or Georgia's number 2. But Georgia then has Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Georgia Tech. So, I mean, it's a tough road. Like, I know Florida is a really tough road, but Georgia has almost as tough a road as Florida here. So we'll see. All right, last 2 games. Kansas State, West Virginia. Kansas State blows out West Virginia 45-18. Garrett Green did not look good again. 2 interceptions, 85 yards passing, 89 on the ground. But Avery Johnson looked amazing. 298, nearly 300 yards, 3 TDs. Giddens had 2 TDs on the ground. Kansas State is a real deal team. 412 yards. 298, like I said, passing, 114 rushing, 7 of 12 on third down, 1 of 1 on fourth down. So very efficient there. 19 first downs and no turnovers. So that's huge. And then as far as Kansas State's remaining schedule, they have Kansas, which they should be able to take care of. Houston, easy game. Arizona State and Cincinnati. So Arizona State is their toughest matchup the last 2 weeks or last 4 weeks, and they have that game at home. So Kansas State could go 11-1 going to this Big 12 championship game, and I would think because they would a good loss to BYU, that they would have a real shot at getting into the playoff, regardless of what happens in the Big 12 championship game. Okay, moving on. Last team we cover, Florida, Kentucky. I'm so grateful that Florida finally beat Kentucky because I'm tired of them losing to Kentucky. It had been 3 straight years. The one started off with Dan Mullen in the year he got fired and him smiling as he's coming off the field. And it's like, it was just, that was such a brutal loss because they had I think they had just come off losing to Alabama by 2 points, and it was or 1 point or whatever. And it's you know, I don't know. It started off with that loss, and then last 2 years with Billy losing to Kentucky, and it was tough. Honestly, man, it really was tough because Kentucky is not as talented as Florida, and yet Kentucky seemingly had their number. The Anthony Richardson game, Anthony throws a pick six. They were up 16-6 at one point and seemingly in control, and then things just kind of fell apart. Last year, they never had a shot. Ray Davis ran all over him. I think he ran for 280 yards or something like that. It was something ridiculous. But in this game, Florida was in complete control almost all the way through. Kentucky had an early 7-6 lead, but after that, Florida scored 24 points in the second quarter and just took it to them. Lagway, I mean, what can I say? I wrote an article. It's on haterradio.com about him. 7 of 14, 259 yards, no touchdowns. And he did have a pick, but just slinging the ball all over the place. He had 5 explosive plays and, just huge. Jaden Baugh, I mean, we've been talking about Jaden Baugh since the spring game. Jaden Baugh, 22 carries for 106 yards, 5 TDs, just a monster game. It is only the second time, I believe, a Florida player has had 5 TDs, and I think it was Tim Tebow and Trey Burton. So really good company right there. And, the defense looked great. Badger, oh my God, Badger had 3 catches for 148 yards. Basically, every catch was a 50-yard catch. Trey Wilson had a really big catch. Chamar DK had a really good game. Just defensively, like I said, was just phenomenal. I mean, they what do they have? 309 total yards, only 165 through the air. They did run the ball a little bit, 144, but they kept their yards per play to 4.5. They got off the field on third down and fourth downs. They held them to 4 of 13 third downs and 1 of 5 on fourth down. So they did quite well there. They forced 3 punts, forced 3 interceptions. Kermani McLean had a pick 6, had a pass breakup in the end zone. Jason Marshall got hurt, so we'll see how he does in the bye week. Hopefully it's not anything too severe. Just a lot to like from this team. Robinson, linebacker for Florida, just tremendous. I mean, the kid, I don't even think he was starting in the beginning of the year. Now he's just earning playing time every week, and he's just showing out. Bridges, the DB for Florida, dude, just killing it. He had an interception. Just I don't know. It is remarkable how well this team is playing now that I don't know. It seemed like for weeks that they struggled to do anything defensively. Now it's they're in the backfield. They're making tackles for loss. They're getting sacks. They're getting turnovers. I mean, 3 picks. I don't think we've had 3 picks in a game since probably 2019. It's been that long. It really has been such a drought of turnovers. And to see it finally go the other way it's remarkable. And I'm really appreciative of it because in that Texas A&M game, I didn't even want to watch the defense. I was so ashamed to watch it because it was like a sieve, like a backup QB, and they just were running down the field at will. And now it's it's the complete opposite. Now they're getting stops, they're getting turnovers, they're doing the things they do. And yes, Vandergriff is not that good, and Kentucky in general is kind of offensively challenged, but defensively they're very strong. And the other thing is the offense dominated this Kentucky defense, and they put up 476 yards and just almost 200 yards rushing, 197. It's just remarkable. It was such a great performance. Probably, I would say this is the most dominating performance in the Billy Napier era. And, I don't know what's going to happen because obviously there's a lot to be made the next couple of weeks. It's Georgia, it's Ole Miss, it's LSU, it's Florida State. So, a lot is going to happen. But, to get this win, to see where things are going, like, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. And I've been one the last couple of weeks to be on the fire Billy Napier bus, and I've been behind it. But let's see what happens. I think a lot of us had said in the beginning of the year, if they had gotten through this season 6-6, 7-5, that he would survive. As of right now, they're 4-3. It is not likely, but it is possible that they could get to 7-5, maybe even 6-6. So maybe he does keep his job. And they are fighting. Like everyone, like so many people tweeted out, the fight in the team is there. They're definitely taking it to these teams. And Jaden Baugh, I mean, I'm telling you, the kid's a revelation. And he's a huge back, and he's shifty, and he is just everything you want in a back. And DJ, I mean, what can I say? DJ, like we said, DJ dimes, man. He really throws dimes. He knows how to throw the long ball better than anybody. And it's such a difference in that offense between where they were with Mertz. And I love Mertz, and I hope he does well in his life. But, he was just limited. And DJ is not limited. His ceiling is through the roof. It might even be higher than AR's, because AR was not as polished of a passer as Lagway is. Lagway is very sound passing wise, especially with the long ball. I mean, the long ball is just, it is so like on point. Like it was right on Badger, like so he could keep running. I know Badger got caught on a couple of those, but like just, man, Badger looks so good. I love this offense. There's so many playmakers on this offense. And I know it feels frustrating to watch the play calling, but there is a lot to like about this team. And it is completely opened up now that Lagway is the starter, because you have to respect the RPO. You have to respect the long ball. So now the defenses are not just playing tight in the box, waiting for short throws and, the runs up the middle. They're like actually respecting everything that Florida's throwing at them. So there's more open possibilities. We knew this. We all knew this. We all talked about it on Twitter X. We said how Lagway was the better quarterback. And it's terrible that it had to be an injury to replace Mertz, but Lagway needed to be starting. But maybe things work out that way because maybe, he needed to be able to ease into this a little bit before he just became a starter. And, I don't know. It's weird how things somehow work out that way. But Lagway's taking advantage of it. And I'm not saying that Florida's going to win this Georgia game. It's definitely going to be an uphill battle, and who knows what's going to happen. But they have a bye week. Lagway is now fully in command of the offense. I don't know what to think. I honestly don't. If the defense plays as well as they have the last 3-4 weeks, if they play like that against Georgia, they have a shot. And if Lagway can hit downfield passes, which I think he can, which I think Alabama did against Georgia, and I think Lagway is a better deep ball thrower than Milroe, I think that they have an opportunity. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it looked way better than it did 2-3 weeks ago, and I don't think anybody would have thought that 2-3 weeks ago. Great to see this win. Great to see where they're going. Great to see this momentum. And I'm wearing the orange shirt because Kentucky wears blue. And so we got to wear our orange when we play Kentucky. And that's what needs to happen again, Billy. You got to start wearing the unique combos. Orange jerseys got to come back. And they got to do homecoming games with old school retro jerseys and helmets. It's fun. You need to do that stuff. I don't know why it's like the same, blue and white. I know that's our standard and I get that, but at the same time, I love the orange jersey. The orange jersey is great. All orange. God, all orange against Kentucky is the way that we have to play them. I love that, especially at home. Okay. That is the show. We will be back on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Look at our articles, haterradio.com. I've got one on DJ Lagway. I've got one on the CFP Reimagined. We'll probably have one for the Georgia game coming up. Reach us there at haterradio.com. You can catch the show on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, Twitter. And then for the social media accounts to reach those, for X, Twitter, for Instagram, Threads, and TikTok, it is at hater_radio. For Facebook, it is Hater Radio CFB. For YouTube, it is at Hater Radio. That's the show. Have a good weekend. We'll see what happens with this Dodger game. I'll be there tonight, and then we'll see you Wednesday.